You're from Kerry, and I believe your parents are for Nigerian origin. Can you tell us a little bit more about you, how how you grew up in Kerry, and how you eventually ended up in Trinity?
Yes, of course, I'd be happy to. My name is Olev, you've said, and I am the firstborn daughter of Nigerian immigrants to Ireland. And we grew up in Kerry. We grew up in Tralee. I don't know if you know the Rose of Tralee, but
I know.
that's my town. And to be honest, I had a very good upbringing. However, I do feel that my race and my background did play a significant role in my experience when I was younger, and that has really informed what I want to do with my career, and it's really informed the reason why I came to Trinity as well, which we'll probably get into. When I was younger, my parents would always try and instill in me that my blackness, my Nigerianness is something to be proud of and it's not something to be ashamed of, because I think naturally as an immigrant child you do notice your difference. You know, when you're in a classroom and you're the only person who looks like you in that classroom, you do immediately maybe feel like singled out, or you feel just visibly different to everybody else. Some people can take that as a positive and some people can take that as a negative. And I do think being very young, my default was negative. However, with my parents constantly telling me that your difference is something to be valued, you know. A lot of people will try and do a lot of different things to stand out, but you just being in the room alone and you haven't even said anything, you do stand out. And so I've decided to frame that as a positive. And with applying to Trinity, that is something as well that I really valued and I really tried to express as well. So I went through secondary school and grew
In
up
Tralee as well?
in Chile, yes. And I had quite a good secondary school experience, but I was, again, one of the ethnic minority groups in my school for the 7 years. And in terms of colleges...
So what would so you grew up in the early 2000s, was it? Or?
Yeah, in early 2000s.
And so like in a school like this in Tralee,
Or late 2000s, actually.
late, sorry. So how many, black people would be in the school? Like, how many people of a similar background or origin? And
Yeah, so in my class specifically, I think there was around 4 of us.
Okay.
And my class was one of the most diverse classes, to be honest. We used to joke that they kind of put all the multicultural people in one class, because there was a lot of people from India as well in my class, Bangladesh and Germany as well. So we used to joke a little bit about that, just because we actually did notice in the other classes there was not many multicultural people. In hindsight, I don't know if that was on purpose or not, but yeah, so...
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Yeah,
Yeah.
obviously, yeah, as you say, a minority.
Yes. And kind of growing up in Kerry, the natural, let's say, progression for people is usually to go to university in Cork or Limerick or Galway, just because they're a lot closer, firstly, and they're a little bit closer to the culture in Kerry, which is very rural, very kind of localized, very small. Whereas not a lot of people actually move to Dublin for college. So to be honest, it wasn't until my very final 5 months of secondary school that I made the decision that I do want to come to Dublin. I kind of fell into a bit of groupthink, just kind of wanting to go with the crowd and saying, okay, I'm going to stay close to home. However, I did feel that the biggest opportunities would be for me if I moved into Dublin. And also I had some conversations with people who had graduated from Trinity, and they really talked a lot about the network that you build in Trinity. If you want to work in multinational companies, that Trinity really is the university you should go to. And so that was when I kind of set my mind on Trinity. And the person I was speaking to also happened to be Nigerian and also happened to have grown up in Kerry. So for me, that was just incredible to see like how much he grew as a person, coming from exactly the same background that I did. And he was working in Deloitte as a consultant. And that just really showed me that it's possible for me, regardless of what I look like or what gender I am.
Okay.
And so I set my sights on Trinity.
Very good. And you're part of the Trinity, or you were part of the Trinity Access Programme. Can you tell us a bit about your experience at Trinity and about the Trinity Access Programme from your perspective in a few words?
Yeah, so the Trinity Access Programme is a programme that I entered university through, and it was honestly so impactful to me personally. One of the biggest things is that they really emphasize that people who are coming from maybe lower socioeconomic backgrounds or from rural backgrounds, or if you're the first person in your family to go to college, that you still have a place here in Trinity. And that place starts through TAP, but eventually you just, become exactly like the rest of the cohort in Trinity. So they did, validate the fact that we do come from different places, but they never made us feel singled out within Trinity. So before I actually entered university, they did a course. It was like a 3-day course just about how Trinity works, about the different services, about the career opportunities you can get from Trinity. Even they did a campus tour that was virtual, so if you couldn't make it, you could actually just watch it from online. And the biggest thing as well was that we got to also meet other people that were also on the program. And that was great for me because I was the only person who, from secondary school, came to Trinity, to my knowledge. And so I didn't have any friends, I didn't have any network, I didn't have anyone at all that I knew in Dublin, let alone Trinity, aside from the Nigerian guy that I spoke to. And so getting to see other people who were also from Kerry that were actually going to be moving to Trinity was it really comforted me to know that I'm not alone. And then another thing they were really great for is kind of scholarships and financial aid. So Trinity Access, they really have a lot of opportunities for students to get scholarships, maybe in research or maybe in academics, and to really push yourself outside of just your regular modules you do day to day. So I took advantage of that, and I was able to land a scholarship in my first year, which really helped me throughout the 4 years of college. And it was really amazing because it helped me do Erasmus as well. So I ended up moving to Paris for a year, got to study there, which again informed my mindset about diversity. And that wouldn't have happened if I didn't have the scholarship from TAP, and I wouldn't have had the scholarship from TAP if I didn't engage in the program in the beginning.
Very good. Then when you were here, and we're going to get to the topic that interests us today then, which is, like you've already mentioned it in a few times in your conversation, the topic of diversity, equity and inclusion. So your own dissertation as an undergrad here was dealing with entrepreneurship from minority ethnic group. So can you tell us a little bit about your dissertation and your finding, and then we'll broader the conversation around DEI in general?
Yeah, of course. So my dissertation was about ethnic minority entrepreneurship, as you said, and the reason why I picked the topic is because I really wanted to highlight that there are so many different types of entrepreneurs. I know that sounds very basic, but when you get into the deep levels of that, you really understand that there's a lot of kind of systemic issues within Ireland, and a lot of opportunities that we do have for entrepreneurs in Ireland, but maybe some of them don't actually cater towards certain groups of entrepreneurs. Maybe access to those opportunities is difficult for certain entrepreneurs. And so I really wanted to tackle that issue. And also coming from an ethnic minority group, it's just a very personal topic to me. And as someone who eventually wants to inspire into entrepreneurship, I thought this would be a great idea for me to do so I could actually research about the ecosystem in Ireland and see maybe what kind of challenges might I face or what opportunities are there for me as a Black woman who was going to go into entrepreneurship. So I ended up researching the ecosystem in Ireland. So I looked at policies, I looked at financing and access to finance, I looked at the market development, I looked at the culture surrounding entrepreneurship in Ireland, I looked at human capital and kind of skill development, and kind of a lot of theoretical frameworks as well, and put them together in order to create my research project. And I also got to speak to 9 entrepreneurs that were from a range of different ethnic minority groups in Ireland. Some from Asian backgrounds, some from African American, some from Nigerian Irish, some from Indian backgrounds, and more. And really just talk about their experiences, talk about their challenges. And some of the findings that I came across were really, really interesting and very niche as well. So, for example, if we take finance, a big barrier actually towards scaling startups was access to finance. And this is natural, even if you're not from an ethnic minority group. This is something that almost every entrepreneur will face. However, I found that the level to which you experience this is greater for ethnic minority groups, because sometimes there's really strict requirements for accessing loans from banks. And sometimes when you have an ethnic minority target market, so your product is specifically for minority groups, it's seen as higher risk because those communities are smaller in Ireland, and so it's more difficult to actually obtain loans. So a lot of ethnic minority entrepreneurs will rely on personal finance or family and friend funding, but that only takes you so far. You know, as a startup, eventually after you do your seed round with family and friends, you want to get into venture capital so you can actually scale the business. But then I decided to look into venture capital and interview people who were actually working in those funds, and I found that there were some misalignments. So, for example, when some of the entrepreneurs were pitching to these VCs, the VCs did not necessarily understand the problem. And if anyone is in business, you know that the most significant or important thing is for the VC to understand that this is a very real problem that needs to be solved. Because sometimes the entrepreneurs would be solving problems that are specific to ethnic minority communities. And if the funders who are sitting at the table are not from those communities, they don't actually see that as a salient issue or an important issue. And so they don't think it's a viable business, they don't think that it's worth investing into. And that really undermines people's confidence as well in their business ideas. And so, I started speaking more about the issue and kind of came across potential solutions to this problem, because I really wanted to figure out how can we get these minority businesses to scale. You know, if we want to even just have more social cohesion in Ireland, I think that minority businesses are a great way to do that. So how can we actually get them to get VC funding? And one of the ideas that I came up with in my conversations was to actually expand existing funds that are in the UK that are already focused on minority businesses into Ireland. So I think this would be quite a strong solution or idea to implement, because we would be promoting kind of intercultural and, let's say, transnational. I don't want to use too much jargon, but between countries, we'd be promoting collaboration between countries. And I think we'd be able to leverage the UK's networks and resources in Ireland as a starting point until we kind of build up the ethnic minority business community and economy, and then we can start having our own VC funds.